an achievement not just for our staff, but also for those parents who are working exceptionally hard to make sure that their young children can access the curriculum. Explorer attendance rate is 97.4, to as high as 99.75. They actually gave me a breakdown of every day, so I took the low and the high. But between 97.4, which is the low, and a high of 99.75% attendance. The middle school, an average attendance of 97%. The high school ranges from a low of 92% to a high of 98%. And preschool has a number of different metrics that they use to determine their attendance rate, and Rebecca also will be presenting later this evening, so if you have questions about that. But the overall average, when you look at all the different segments of their program that students are participating in, is 90%. So again, I want to give credit to our staff, our secretaries, and those parents who I know are fully invested in making sure their students are engaged with learning. And then also, of course, some of what we'll talk about tonight, but that we're very excited about, is having our students back in our buildings this Wednesday, as we invite our young fives and kindergarten students, as well as our third graders at Explorer Elementary, back for face-to-face learning in their cohorts. So we are all looking forward to Wednesday and seeing those students back in our schools. So that is celebrations for this evening, pending any questions from the board.
Any questions to Adam? Okay, thanks, Adam. We'll move into an education update.
So I know we'll have continued conversation as we get to the discussion portion of the agenda tonight regarding some of the progress that's been made throughout the district in terms of implementing the hybrid learning plan that the board approved earlier this month. I'll provide a summary here, understanding that, again, we'll have plenty of opportunities later tonight to address any questions that the board might have. So starting with Kids Corner Little Hornets, again, Rebecca will be presenting later this evening, but they anticipate a start date for face-to-face learning of 9 November. And later this evening, the board will be hearing the addendum to the Kids Corner Little Hornets handbook, as well as a summary of their preparedness and response plan. For the elementary campus, they have put a lot of work into establishing their hybrid rosters, class rosters. As the board knows, there had to be some moving of some students to meet the request of parents in terms of what they preferred in remote or in-person learning. So that has all now been accomplished. There's continuing internal updates and community communications on process and procedure in terms of what that'll look like. So just about an hour ago, the elementary principal sent out a screencast to parents that shows a visual representation with narration of what arrival and dismissal processes will look like at Explorer and Discovery Elementary Schools. And they've also continued to be in close coordination with the transportation department to arrange not only transportation for parents who will be walking their students to school or dropping them off in the car loop, but also students that will be transported by bus. A couple things I wanted to note to the board, because these are some updates to the addendum, and again, we'll talk about it later, but these are some changes from what was briefed to the policy committee when they looked at the addendums last week. So in terms of bus arrival, third graders are, so when the buses pull in, third graders, and this is for Wednesday, so your first day of school, the third graders are going to be released from the buses, and there's a door that third graders will use to enter into the campus. For our young fives and kindergarten students, many of whom this is their first day of traditional school or non-preschool, the bus drivers are going to walk them into the building to their classrooms. And so that'll accomplish a couple things. One, make sure that those students feel safe and secure with someone they know, bringing them into a new building, showing them where their room is, and making sure they're linked up with their teacher. And two, it decreases the amounts of adults that we'll have in the building, which, as we all know, is an important safety consideration. So that has all been thought through, and there is a good plan in place to help those young students on their first day of school, face-to-face school, on Wednesday. As far as pickup procedures, another change that has come up is with the buses. It was determined that the buses will depart from the school and arrive similar to what they've done in the past, and that because we're only going to be dealing with roughly 1/3 of the vehicle traffic, the car traffic that we would have on a traditional day of school, we'll continue to use the car loop for arrival and pickup. It's also the safest and most secure way to ensure that at the end of the day, we're matching up students with their parents. Walkers, again, this is an update that went out to families tonight, but for families who prefer to walk their children to school, there's a new walker welcome location or center. I can't remember what they called it in the screencast, but that will be the playground at the Kids Corner Little Hornets. There'll be staff there to meet those parents and their children as they're walking to school. So it's directly after they cross the crosswalk there. And they will meet their students there and supervise them at the playground and then walk them into the building or release them to walk into the building depending on what day of school it is and the age of the student as we get going. So again, that'll be a place where parents can ensure they've safely dropped off their child at school. There'll be staff there to meet them, but that those staff will be responsible for then moving those children into the building. And again, that'll go towards decreasing the number of adults in the campus, which again is an important safety consideration. One big change to procedure as far as arrival and pickup is that the Discovery parking lot gate will be closed. There's actually a gate now, so the gate will be closed. It's a new, obviously the gate is new. That parking lot has been a safety concern, I think, as many of us know, for years. I spent a lot of time out there with cones and other things back when I was the principal there. So I think it will accomplish a couple things. One, it'll redirect folks and hopefully make sure that, again, we're decreasing the number of folks that are entering the building or congregating around entrances. And two, it's just a general safety piece. We've had a lot of close calls there with cars swinging in to drop off or backing up and little ones walking in that lot. So it's something different. But again, since we're dealing with roughly 1/3 the vehicle traffic that we would have on a typical day, I think it's a promising safety enhancement. Moving on to the middle and the high school. Tonight the board will look at...
You want me to ask a question now or wait till you're done?
I'm fine with questions.
So, what time will the Discovery gate be locked? Like, will it be open for our staff to get in and then locked at, like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
So I don't know the time, but there is a time that's been communicated out to staff. And so if you report to work after the gate is closed, you'll simply park in the Explorer lot. And I know there's some staff, for example, at the preschool and childcare that need more flexibility during the day, given that they're half-day programs in some cases. And so they would just be encouraged to park in the Explorer lot.
So they're aware that there's a time.
Yeah, the elementary principals have or will be communicating that to their staff.
I have a question. What is, for the walkers to the elementary school, what's the contingency plan for rainy days or bad weather? Instead of meeting outside, what would be?
As far as like a staging area?
Yeah.
Well, I would assume at this point, and we haven't explicitly had that conversation, but there's nothing to say we can't move the students into the building on more of a streaming type of basis versus holding them all there. And again, part of this is going to be like so many other things, whether it's COVID contingency responses. There's going to be a lot of lessons learned rather rapidly, and the administrative team is aware of that. We'll continue to dialogue throughout this process to make sure we're addressing those types of contingencies.
And the Walker's Playground, is that the playground adjacent to the central office?
Yes.
Okay.
As I mentioned, if for parents that are watching tonight, if you have a child in the elementary schools, there's that narrated screencast that was put out tonight, and it'll actually show the doors your child will walk through and where to go. So Cassie and Kelly did a very nice job putting that together. All right, so the middle and high school, this evening the board will review the camera request, which again is contingent on how that timeline will work out. They're continuing to look at the speaker and mic systems within the classroom. They've purchased a couple new, or maybe rented is a better word, some different speaker systems, and they're experimenting with how to promote two-way dialogue during the streaming portion of lessons. So The camera system that we have right now, and again, this will come up later in the agenda, it does a great job of making you feel like you're sitting in the classroom with your classmates. But the thing we're still experimenting with is how do we pick up enough audio in the classroom so if you have a small group over here that's talking about something, that the student sitting at home can listen in on that conversation, or if there's students in the class simply answering questions or having a conversation, so that student at home can pick up on that conversation. So different systems they're experimenting with in terms of what that'll look like. The baseline system, though, which is a microphone that the teacher will have control over, works. It's just that we're looking to see if there's some other types of speakers that might work better. And they've also finalized, or in the process of finalizing their cohort groups and getting those rosters together. And again, when that is communicated, that's contingent upon when we get the technology installed and ready to go. Moving on to custodial and maintenance. This evening, as the board is aware, there's a letter of agreement that Mr. Gaffner has that will allow us to increase our staffing both for the transportation department in terms of providing operator level maintenance for our buses, but also an additional part-time district employee who will support the maintenance team. We've also hired in this past week an additional custodian who will replace Gary, who I think many of you know from his 40-plus year career at our high school, who just retired this summer. And so now all our custodial, full-time custodial positions are full. And we're in the process of hiring at least one long-term or possibly two part-time long-term custodians to help with cleaning, touch points, and other things that come up throughout the day. So Mr. Weingartz is continuing to make progress on that additional staffing. And finally, at the district level, as I've communicated to you previously, we finalized our processes for COVID-related leave and child care leave, and we've developed a systematic communication and reporting system for any COVID-related contingencies, which includes an internal flow chart that illustrates the processes that we'll utilize, and then also a dashboard tool that's been posted on the homepage that parents can access to see if there are any school-associated cases that we're currently dealing with. And that's in addition to any communication would also be sent home from the building administrators, depending on the circumstance. So I know we'll have more time later to talk about some of this too, but that's a general overview of where we are at as far as implementing the plan. Are there any additional questions I could address?
No additional questions at this time, Mr. Adams? Okay, thank you, Ed. Go back to professional development.
So just briefly before professional development, just a quick preview of what's going to be upcoming over the next couple of meetings.
Oh, sorry.
On the 16th, we'll reaffirm our COVID-19 learning plan. As you know, that's a requirement that gets revisited by the board on a monthly basis, and so we will present that to you along with any changes that are applicable. We'll also start to see mid-year hire recommendation memos for probationary teachers start to come into board book as their building administrators finalize those recommendations. So I believe you'll see the first two of, I can't remember off the top of my head how many there are, but the first two will come in on the 16th for your review. And then moving to the 7th, again, monthly requirement to reaffirm the COVID-19 learning plan and the consideration of summer tax resolution. And for the education update, Dr. Cook will be providing a summary of the state letter grade system, which is currently embargoed, but I can give you a sneak preview. You'll hear good news. Any questions on upcoming events? So then moving to professional development, and this is kind of going back to when we were in a more traditional flow of these meetings. I'd like to provide the board a quick summary of what the buildings did during their scheduled professional development days. So just briefly, for the October 23rd professional development session, Discovery Elementary focused on hybrid learning preparation. As you might assume, that was a theme throughout all the buildings. To include guidelines for physical layouts of classrooms, so we're looking a lot of implementing safety protocol in their classrooms for students returning for face-to-face learning. All buildings, to include Discovery, focused on Title IX training. There's a new law that makes everyone a mandatory reporter, and so that was a requirement for all staff throughout the district to participate in that training. And then Discovery also focused on their positive behavior interventions and supports lesson, or PBIS, which we're focusing on assisting students with transitioning into the new hybrid model. Explore focused again on the logistics and preparation for the implementation of the hybrid learning plan, and again completed Title IX training. The middle school and the high school focused on exploring and developing more familiarity with different learning, with different technology tools that can be used to enhance both hybrid and remote learning. And so they looked at several different new systems that are being utilized by educators at these two buildings, and we're able to discuss lessons learned and what goes well and how to work some of those things. So a great example is using Google Meet breakout rooms to focus on intervention or small group work. And there's just some of those next level types of instructional capabilities for remote instruction that we might not have become proficient in prior to this. And then additionally, just one quick note at the high school, we were able to preview a demonstration of the recommended camera model for their streaming capabilities, which the board will visit later tonight on the agenda. So that was a quick overview of professional development for the 23rd of October. Are there any questions that I can address?
Okay, thank you, Adam. Having no questions, move on to board committee reports. Sarah, we have policy subcommittee. I don't know if you have anything in addition to when we get down into discussion for all the items, or?
Well, two of them are up for discussion tonight. We did get a chance to preview the handbooks, the amendments for the handbooks that we are going to be looking at tonight. Other policies are still under review for clarity, more discussion to follow, and hopefully we will be bringing those to the board in due time.
Okay. Thank you. And then board goals and superintendent evaluation subcommittee meeting on the 9th.
Yep, yeah, we're meeting on the 9th to discuss the process for evaluation of our superintendent, as well as starting the process to identify what process we want to follow to examine our board goals starting in the new year.
Okay. Thank you. Moving into discussion items, first item which is for discussion this evening is appointment of deputy superintendent. And Adam, I will ask you to share your proposal.
So in summary, the proposal for consideration is the appointment, or is the awarding of an additional title to Ms. Kelly Campbell of Deputy Superintendent. In the memo that's in your packet, I've outlined the rationale for this, which is in summary and recognition both of her abilities and her long-standing service of over 30 years to the Williamston Community Schools. She's worked at every level and almost every instructional position there is, from secondary teacher, elementary teacher, curriculum coordinator, principal, and interim superintendent. So she's done it all. She knows the district, and she's done everything that she's ever been assigned or taken on with class and success. And so the proposal is, in addition to her title of Explorer Elementary Principal, that should be awarded this additional title of Deputy Superintendent for the district.
Thank you, Adam. I think we've all kind of had some conversation around this individually, and certainly don't want to speak with who will come to the vote next week, but very encouraging conversations. So does anybody have any questions or comments?
I can go. I just think this is, I think incredibly highly of Kelly. I had an opportunity to work with her when I worked in Williamston. She's worked in a lot of leadership roles, just teacher leadership roles, and taking over principal, kind of filling a hole when we needed it at a time, and then moving into that position, and again, filling a leadership role when we needed her to in a very difficult situation. This is, I I think a lot of people, her staff, and many other administrators have incredible respect for her, and this is it's an honor that's well deserved to her.
Anybody else? I echo it. I mean, it's one thing to step into an interim role, but then to step into an interim role during what we just went through is incredible. And Kelly didn't miss a beat. And obviously, in addition to her years of service and her qualifications, the work that she did while Ed was on leave during the COVID and the way she kept her cool and stayed at the helm and collaborated with so many different people so positively, I fully support this. So, okay, next is staff leaves. We have two, is that right?
Yes.
Yep. 2 staff leaves, and you have the memo and the support. Do we have any discussion on those staff leave requests?
We just push those to vote on at the next meeting, correct?
Yep.
I think that's the best thing to do.
There's no need, right? We can vote next.
They can be.
Okay, if there's none, we'll move on now to the board policy edits or revisions. Sarah, do you want to walk us through these, or who's going to take the lead?
I'll actually let Adam, if he doesn't mind, he has some more background knowledge, on some of them, and then I can fill in any holes if needed.
So 2,800 records is pretty straightforward. It's just a review since it's one of those policies we haven't looked at for a while, and just some small grammatical edits. Moving on to 8015, Nondiscrimination Section 504. This was a policy that Dr. Cook has been working on diligently in conjunction with the Office of Civil Rights, and this has actually been taken to OCR and reviewed at their level and approved. So this has gone through, I guess you could say, the highest level of editorial scrutiny, and is ready for your consideration. I don't have any other comments on the 2 policies, pending any questions you might have.
Okay, questions or comments on those?
So we can just move those for voting next.
Yep, so those will be moved to action for next week,
2 weeks.
or next meeting, I mean. All right, that brings us to student handbook updates for students, Kids Corner, and Little Hornets.
So in front of you is our handbook, and the edits that were made were simply to address the hybrid learning style. Presented in previous board meetings, we said that we were doing fully remote opportunities for preschoolers, as well as a hybrid approach that's been adopted moving forward. This has changed some of our program policies and procedures for mostly our Kids Corner child care portion. So when Kids Corner kids are usually in child care, it's usually for out of school time, enrichment activities. Lots of arts and crafts, lots of playground time. We had to change and put some edits into the handbook to accommodate the extra screen time that would be happening when children are in, school-age children are in care. So that was added. We also added some items to address new formatting and how preschool would be implemented. For instance, some of our family communication is different. We've added some family coaching opportunities. So simple things to accommodate the hybrid learning style. The big addition to our handbook is the amendment at the back, which is our COVID Preparedness and Response Plan. This plan has really evolved over time because in the beginning, back in March and April, all licensed child care centers were closed. There were some emergency centers that were open. If a center closed and wanted to reopen, they had to create a preparedness and response plan. And Lara, which is the licensing and Regulatory Affairs, which governs child care centers, developed a format for these plans. It addressed how environments were going to be created, monitoring for health and safety, spacing, movement and access, safety equipment, and health and hygiene. And then how you're going to communicate your plan to your stakeholders. So with that, the formatting and the content has changed a bit over time with new guidelines that have been released. We find more and more information coming out about our responses to COVID. And the most recent edits really align our program policies and procedures with what the district has put forth in their preparedness response plan, as well as their reopening strategies. So the final portion of our preparedness and response plan is communicating with families, and so we communicate with all of our stakeholders by making sure that they're aware of it, of the contents in it, as I'm doing here tonight, as well as providing all of that information to families. And I'd be happy to answer any questions or clarifications that you might have on the plan.
Questions of Rebecca?
I don't have anything. I'd like to commend you. This was so easy to follow on what was changed and what was added. This memorandum with page numbers really helped, especially kind of going through our new board book. It was very, very helpful and very well done. So I don't have any.
I agree.
Thank you.
Very thorough, very well done, very Julie?
Yeah, I just have one question. In reference to this student daily procedure, so if a student does get a fever during the day or has something where they have to go home, if the family doesn't have any self-quarantine or anybody they've had in contact that has COVID, is it just then after the fever is passed, just like normal, that you're allowed to come back to the school and everything with that? Because I know with flu going around, you might get 24-hour bug or something like that, but as long as the family's like, nobody's been in contact with anybody with COVID, are they allowed to just come back to class after 24 hours of that fever breaking and any of the symptoms?
As long as it's been one symptom. If it's been multiple symptoms and there's not a diagnosis on some other part. Most families we're finding right now that if their child is spiking a fever or showing multiple symptoms, they are seeking the guidance of their healthcare provider.
Okay.
And so we're encouraging that as well. And if the healthcare provider is diagnosing them with either strep throat or say an ear infection, and they get those antibiotics and the fever has passed and the symptoms have subsided, then they are allowed to return to care. But it is a lot of communication between our program and the families. And I have found that families have been really, really responsive. They are wanting to protect their children's health as well as they want the same respect from other families.
No problem. Thank you.
I think you'll find a similar theme in the addendums for the other buildings as well in terms of what that process will look like, and the same caveat that it's going to be an ongoing communication piece that involves a partnership between families and school, and then as needed, medical professionals.
Any other questions? Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you very
That
much.
was very nice.
It was very
Thank
nice.
you.
Okay, discovery.
So I decided to give our administrative team, with a couple exceptions, the evening off. So I'm going to attempt to summarize the handbooks, and I think I should be able to do that. They're all following a base model. So the discussion had come up in policy about how to update existing board policy in a way that meets the intent, or actually the letter of the law, with the new executive orders from the Department of Health and Human Services. And as an administrative team, what we settled on is the best way to do that in a flexible and responsive manner is, instead of going in and looking at our 400 plus board policies, to instead do this through a handbook update, which are much more flexible. They're updated at least annually and can be more often as needed. So instead of and again, when the board approves a handbook, that becomes board policy just as much as any other document in our collection. So we started with a base template, and so you'll see similarities between all schools. And I'll just hit some of the things that they highlight, because again, there's many similarities. The part where you'll see the biggest deviation is when we get to procedures for arrival and dismissal. Obviously, those will look different between an elementary school and a secondary building. So some highlights you'll see at the beginning of each one of those, they all have in common the safety protocol, and very much in keeping with the same concept that Rebecca just covered for the preschool and child care program. The arrival and dismissal protocol for each building are located inside of those, and just additional logistical information, all of which will be elaborated on in further detail as those buildings come online with face-to-face instruction. So for example, in the elementary document, they're informing parents there about out-of-school learning experiences, which unfortunately this year are going to be hard to do in person, visitors in the building, protocol for how to check your child out of the school during the school day, etc. So all starting from one base document, you'll see a lot of conceptual similarities, and then there'll be some changes given the unique circumstances of each building. So it might be easier to then kind of take any unique questions about a particular building, since again there's a lot of similarity between the four buildings. And then the only other one there is the transportation handbook, which again replicates a similar model from the schools, but just as a short update to the existing transportation rules document that's passed out to families annually.
So I have a question. This is both at the middle school and high school. So it says that the exterior doors will be unlocked 20 minutes prior to school starting, and then kids are to be shuffled, I don't want to say shuffled, but will be then escorted, or kind of like you need to go right to your classroom. So will there be teachers in those classrooms 20 minutes before the actual start of class?
Yeah, so what the high school has designed is a kind of de facto office hours period, which will allow students to receive additional face-to-face, small group, or individual support prior to the regular school day starting with whatever their first hour of that day is. And so the other benefit is that it'll stagger the arrival of high school students, so that we don't have groups of students all arriving at the same time. Now again, when we talk about this, just like the elementary campus, we're talking about 1/3 of the normal high school population. So it's going to look a lot different than it does in a traditional year. So you kind of have to picture that in your minds. It's going to be significantly different. So the way it'll work is students have the opportunity to come in up to that those many minutes in advance. They'll be able to go to the classroom they'd like to get support with, and then when that amount of time has expired, it'll be like the traditional start of first period. So those students will then, if they're in that room already, they'll move and stay there if that's their first class. If it's not, they'll then move directly to their regular first hour class for that day and then start class there. If students arrive early and they don't need additional support, again, they're not going to be able to congregate, and so they'll simply move to their first hour class. They might get there a few minutes early, and that's fine. So you might see, for example, in a classroom, 5 students who kind of trickle in that don't need any additional support. They're just kind of staggering their arrival into the building, and they'll sit down and just prepare for first hour. And you might have another 5 students in that classroom that got there specifically 15 minutes early because they need some support for a project or the assessment or whatever the current lesson is that they might need some help with. So it's designed to be very flexible and provide some students some autonomy to get that additional face-to-face support before their cohort begins its instructional day.
If students have 0 hours, would that be the same time period then?
Not literally, because this will be a PM.
Oh, I thought you were saying at the beginning of the day.
Well, they're beginning of their face-to-face day, so that's good
Oh,
clarification.
okay.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. So it's the beginning of their face-to-face day,
Okay.
and then their first hour as scheduled for that day, which could could be 4th hour, given the cohort group that they're in.
Has there been talk about, for those that are taking 0 hours on the days that they would be in person, would they be having a 0 hour that early like they've been doing?
I have not broached that topic, but that's a good question. I can find that out for you.
Okay. Because I do know they're meeting at 7:10 a.m. still, so.
Right, but that is a good question. So is that every day? So if you have a 0
No,
hour.
Right now, it's 2 or 3 days a week.
So if you're like in,
Jazz band.
right, it's jazz band, but if you're like in a cohort, like if jazz band's Monday, Wednesday, or whatever it is, and your cohort isn't Tuesday, Thursday, like, is there a sign up, like, are kids coming in at 7:10 for that time and then, like, doesn't
Yeah,
have
That's
school?
part of the question, is if they're meeting in person, are they still coming in on days when they're not supposed to be there or not?
Wow. Kudos to those kids if they, like, that's pretty good.
So as far as the hours that teachers are expected, so an elementary school teacher, classes start at 8:25, so they're in the classroom, what, 8:15?
Well, you mean in terms of total hours in a workday?
Yeah, so when they get there, and then classes are dismissed at 3:30, so what is their day looking like, the elementary school teacher?
Well, in terms of like their normal working hours, it'll look identical to the schedule they've already had. But we have an underlying philosophy in our district that our educators are professionals,
Right.
And so, they will, as they always have, they'll work the standard, not the time, and make sure that they're prepared, and as are their students. So, but in terms of the contractual start and end times, they're the same as what's in our agreement with the association.
So then what about middle school, high school, since they're in the afternoon?
It's the same.
Same.
There's no change to the contract.
I just have a question. So being that we are at a third, do you think that we will be able to maintain 6 feet in the classrooms to avoid the inevitable COVID positive and not having to shut down an entire classroom or entire school if that happens?
Well, the contingencies are, hard to predict, and even with the very limited contingencies we've dealt with so far, pertaining to some staff and Wilson Talent Center, et cetera, it's a very fluid response, and so that's as far as our internal processes go. Again, it's going to be that connection, that united front between parents and staff and administration, and again, when need be, medical professionals or the health department. So. That ideally is the goal, right? If we keep social distancing and we're wearing masks, But again, it's the process is much more complicated, and it's hard to kind of predict how that'll work. In short, we should be able to provide adequate social distancing in our classrooms. And again, that was part of the professional development that at the elementary school is focused on, is how to establish what your classroom will look like, where's the plexiglass going to go, how your desk going to be set up, where's your hand sanitizer, those types of things. And at the high school, obviously with larger rooms, but also larger students, again, when we look at the very rough estimates of class size, and these are averages, right? So band will look different from, an AP class. But we're looking at cohort sizes on an average of 6 to 7 in one of the cohorts and like around 10 in the other. So we should be able to ensure that we keep that social distancing piece. And again, part of it's going to be the diligence of our staff to provide reminders as needed to students, and also for our older students to take a piece of that ownership as well. But we've had students in the building, so there's kind of a misnomer that we've not had students in the building over these last 3 months. Students have been in the buildings on almost a daily basis. We had high school with many students in that last week for standardized testing. So we've seen this work. Our students have done a great job, our staff has done a great job, and I think families have been instrumental in kind of laying the groundwork at home as far as the precautions and the things that their children should be doing when they come into the building. So we're off to a good start. This is just the next phase of that.
Awesome. Thank you.
So with this AB cohort, high school, middle school, you said kind of the numbers, it could be 6 to 12 kids maybe maximum in the size of the class.
It depends on the type of class and the cohort and all that.
So if we can learn from history, which is what we've been seeing since the middle of August to now with other districts who have been in contact. Many of those schools, it appears to me, that have either had to shut down classes or had to shut down buildings, they either had all their students back in the classrooms, so there was not that 6 feet plus of social distancing. Teachers that were not separated far enough from the students within that 15-minute time, all the different rules that the health departments have said. It appears to me that if we're going to have 6 to 12 kids in a classroom, 6 feet of social distancing is going to happen. That 15-minute time thing, if they're further than the 6 feet, is probably going to be within there. So the district's been taking the precautions that we could have, as I've said before, there will be positive cases. It's going to happen. I mean, they're going to happen. But the chances of us having to shut down aren't going to be as great because our numbers are going to be smaller. And those specific classrooms, it's not going to be like you're sitting here and then the 4 students around you are all going to have to be in quarantine because there will have been at least that 6 feet of separation.
Yeah, and that's I obviously feel good about the model we've adopted and feel good about the safety protocol that we're trying to establish. But there's, numerous variables that unfortunately, none of us can control. And that's again where those internal processes are going to come into play, and communication and transparency, to make sure we address those in a timely and appropriate manner when those situations do occur. So fortunately, I would love to give guarantees, but I don't think anybody in any organization is able to do that right now about this. But we have a good model, we have a good system set up, and obviously we're going to prioritize the safety of our students and our staff, but also making sure that we have a productive and worthwhile learning environment concurrently.
I have a question. I'm not sure. We'll see if you know. I guess I don't know. But in here it also says that bus drivers will be disinfecting the vehicles after each transportation. How long do we know? Is it just like, okay, we spray, like use the sprayer and it dries and we drive away, or is it there a time?
Yeah, it's going to be a mixture of driver level disinfecting as well as them using the sprayers periodically to make sure that happens.
Done?
Yeah, we're actually, so the spray machines will actually rotate. We're going to allocate them toward the bus, but then eventually also allocate one per building. We have 4 total, but yes, that'll be a priority for drivers, just like it will be for teachers to
do that?
maintain their classrooms.
So there'll be enough time so bus drivers are going to pick kids up in the morning, disinfect, go back a couple hours later, pick the kids up, drop them off, disinfect, pick up a new group of kids, drop them off.
Yeah, it's analogous to the quick cleanings
Like
that we'll be
the
doing
cleaning.
during classroom transitions
Yep.
in our classroom. So yeah, essentially same process, just different vehicle, literally.
So you just brought that up, the classroom transitions from your middle school, high school that are normally 4 minutes. Not sure if it's 5 minutes right now because of how they've been doing it online.
Yeah, it's going to be 4 to 5 depending on.
But it's my understanding, at least at some schools that are in session that are doing this same type of thing in between hours and spraying down desks, that you spray it on wet, obviously, and you don't wipe it. You're supposed to let it dry. So do we know how long it's going to take for that to dry? Because I'm pretty sure with things that we have, like in our office, it takes more than 5 minutes for it to completely dry. Kids coming back and sitting in a seat. So
Yeah, I want to kind of be hesitant to get into that level of detail. I mean, obviously it's going to look different in each classroom, and there's also different types of responsibilities that can be delegated and additional support staff that might be available to assist with those things. I mean, it's going to look very different in the elementary level where the students are in that same room all day versus the high school where they'll rotate 3 times. So yeah, it's going to look a little different, but again, we're prioritizing trying to find time to at least do a hasty disinfection of the classroom in between those sessions to the best that we can.
Any other questions?
No, great job.
Excellent, thank you, Ed.
Thank you.
Next is a recommendation for administrator COVID-19 stipends. Any discussion on this?
I have a couple, I have a couple things. I first think this is, well-deserved. I don't believe anyone on this floor who disputes that our administrators have not worked incredibly hard during this really difficult time. And I think, on top of that, with the situation of having our individuals kind of move quickly into new roles, that gave it another, just put on another layer. I would like to, though, look at distributing the funds a little differently, just based on the amount of time people were present in their role. So I kind of did a little math calculation. I can go over that if you want. My proposal would be that our interim superintendent get $3,700, so $3,700. Our listed administrators, the 11, get $3,000, and then the assistant to the superintendent get $1,300.
Any discussion around that or comments? Don't want to get too in the weeds on the detail, but I also recognize.
Yeah, I would just say that I like that plan that Nancy said. I think that based on the roles that they were in, being able to, and the amount of time that people were in them, I think that it makes sense to have a gradated scale and to provide that type of, I'm going to say that the stipend that is based on the role. I think that makes a lot of sense.
I agree.
Makes sense.
Any other comment, Jeff?
No, the only comment that I would have is there anybody that we're missing? I mean, we've got A through L, and I know there's, as we got number 5, is there anybody else in central office that we're not thinking about? Either past or present employers. You got Pam, who does a lot during the summer,
They all qualify for.
and then you've got,
Yeah, I do want to be a little careful. I know I haven't put a lot of time and thought into the strategy around this. I don't want to.
Yeah, I don't want to step on your feet.
I would acknowledge that there's been significant contributions by many folks on our staff that are perhaps not represented in the proposal.
that's why I'm saying, I mean, if we have potential monies that could potentially be distributed amount, even though it's a larger total pool than what's sitting here.
I think we're looking at a couple of different options. One piece is, I think, really trying to hone in on the leadership function. That's been a significant effort. Obviously, there's numerous people throughout our district that put considerable amount of time and effort into this, but I think it is a recognition of that leadership role for these individuals and the person that directly supports them and the board in that capacity.
Nancy, I apologize, can you run down your recommendations again?
So our interim superintendent would get $3,700. The administrators that are listed, all of those would get the recommended 3,000. And then the assistant to the superintendent would get 1,300.
1,000 what?
300,
Okay,
1,300.
okay.
So basically, we're talking about
Shifting.
$38,000.
Correct. And I kind of took that middle number, the administration number versus the 7 months, what that came out daily, and then where people worked a little bit more, like Kelly stepping into that role, so gave her a little bit more, where some came in a little later. So that's where that number comes up.
I also just to, I guess, double down on or I had another thought for Jeff's question. There are some additional funds that we can use to recognize additional staff, most notably through the Treasury grant that's available right now regarding hazardous duty for those staff that supported our efforts last spring. And so Katie and I are working through the significant red tape that's involved in that, but obviously our intent is to recognize those employees and make sure they have the information they need to apply for that grant from the Treasury.
I just know we've had a lot of people working, a lot of overtime, and a lot of getting things ready for, if we were gonna start in August, to starting now. And I just think that if there are more, we should figure out ways to do it. I'm glad that you're looking into that.
Okay, what I would suggest is, thank you, Nancy, for your recommendation. We'll take that under advisement. We'll move this for action at the next board meeting. In the interim, if anybody individually has thoughts or comments and wants to reach out to me, please give me a shout and we'll take it from there. Does that sound good?
Yeah, I think it's a great list, and
Yeah,
I know Adam is putting together in his thoughts and everybody that needs to be over the next 6 to 8 months as things come to be amended. Thank you.
And I'll mention too, I just want to remind everybody too, I think it's known that both for that and then we're going to talk about camera purchase and a lot of these things. All of these are coming from funds from the CARES Act that are additional funds that go up beyond the budget with regard to monies that we have. These are qualifying expenses under the way we can use our CARES Act dollars. So that is correct for all those right now.
That's the intent.
Yeah.
That is the intent for that. There's we still have a month and a half to go, and again, much like the hazardous duty pay, there's a lot of red tape and there's a lot of stipulations that we have to adhere to. But that is definitely our intent for the stipends. And keep you updated if something should change. But
Okay, that's good, thank you. With that, then why don't we talk about the camera purchase, and I also want to put out there too, let us know when we review this, is this something that's important that we set aside the roles and approve tonight for timing as far as getting those to be up and running and ready, or do we have time to talk about it and then just approve it at the next board meeting? So again, I hate to set aside the rules, but at times like this where we have windows where we need to do something,
I'll have to defer back to the board because that's a board procedural piece, and but I would articulate that the timing of the approval, the potential approval, obviously, has a direct correlation with when we can potentially begin the hybrid implementation at the middle and high school. That said,
No, let me rephrase my question. I recognize that it's up to us whether it's set up. I'm asking you, would it be helpful if the school had greater lead time to make the purchase for these cameras? And would that really help in the planning, or doesn't it matter to the school with regard to the timing of the purchase of these cameras?
well, I think obviously there's a balancing act that the board has to look at in terms of the timing and then procedure, right? So I'll kind of put that one aside. Part of the estimated start date is based on assumptions that I can't guarantee in terms of how long it's going to take for the order to come in and then for everything to get installed. So obviously we've never gone about installing and connecting 60 streaming cameras. So we're looking at tentative dates in terms of how many weeks turnaround we could probably get this set up from when the devices actually show up. But, you know, I think you can therefore kind of assume that the longer it takes to approve the purchase, the longer it would take to get everything installed.
So, thank you, Adam. So what I would suggest is, let's talk about this and see if everybody is comfortable with this purchase. And then I personally think it would be wise that we do consider setting aside the rules this evening and approving this, because right now you can't take anything for granted as far as getting, it's very difficult to get stuff, and it's only gonna get worse. I think we're ready. So I think if these are available now and we all agree, it would be my desire that we set aside the rules and get these approved so we can keep going on this, because I think we only risk not getting done in time and even potentially missing out on getting everything we need. So anyway, so having said that, let's go back to this.
Well, since you brought up the setting aside the rules.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that we've gotten to the point where we set aside the rules too often. And when we do it, it's usually done for the benefit of students. Now granted, the cameras are for the benefit of students, but it's usually trips or something that it's time pressing. And yes, this is time pressing. I know I personally would feel more comfortable because we've had so many meetings and we don't have to have every meeting in person. Even if we scheduled this thing, have our discussion today and have a meeting Thursday or Friday or even Wednesday, so you get the 24-hour notice, we could all do a Zoom call and we could vote on it so that we're not setting aside the rules. Because I think we're setting bad precedent, and I think we've done it too much.
I disagree. I don't.
Well, we're in the middle of a pandemic for one, so that changes it, but
I could think of 4 times.
we've been told about this we've been knowing this is coming for 3 weeks. We have an invoice that shows that our pricing expires on November 9th. That's page 2 of this, right? So if we don't set aside the rules, we
You're
have
not
to
hearing
get
me
another
out.
invoice.
What I'm saying is that we schedule a meeting, we discuss it tonight, just like other districts in this the surrounding communities have done, and meet in a couple days via a Zoom meeting or a quick meeting to approve it. When we had other board members on the board, we did that plenty of times where we would meet early morning at 7 o'clock over at the elementary school to approve something really quick, or come here to approve something really quick. We're not then setting aside the rules.
Well, I understand that, but making a new meeting is kind of almost the same thing, and what is gonna change? Are you going to call him tomorrow and go over all this technology and figure out? I'm just saying, if it was something that we weren't aware of, I would totally understand. If it was something that was brought up, but we've known this has been coming. This was on the last discussion, that we were gonna be waiting for the owls to come, that they were gonna be looking at that, so we knew kind of the
My
price.
point is, then this invoice and all that probably should have been a part of the last meeting. It was not, okay?
Okay.
And I think that, you know, I just think that
So,
even if it's 2 days, I just think the optics are better. That's all I'm saying. And if the board as a whole says, let's set aside the rules and let's do it, I'm fine with it. I'm not gonna vote no. But I'm just saying that we need to really take into consideration this whole setting aside the rules. Many boards in this area do not set aside the rules for any reason, okay?
Got it.
If you're late, sorry. They
Got it.
follow
Okay.
protocol, and I just think we've gotten,
Okay.
it's become
So,
a,
Evan, can you tell me, I mean, I know we set aside the rules, I'm not a fan of setting aside the rules. I say that every time, and every time I do it. And so I guess for this purchase, I would like to know, is there some, like, are these hard to get? Are they being held? Are they, like, we did this 2 weeks ago because the Chromebooks were hard to get. We had a lockdown on the number. We needed to get them paid for. Is that what this is with these cameras?
So obviously there's variables at play that I can't control. There could be a, 30,000 student district somewhere that's looking to do this in Texas. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know that. Right now, I know that they're available from what the vendors told us. That's not to put like pressure to do anything. I'm just saying, like, I can't control that piece. So the real, I guess, X factor is really on our end. Once they arrive, like, how long is it going to take to get them installed? I mean, we have a good plan, but again, trying to do something to this scale quickly is kind of an unknown. So I'm trying to stay out of the current discussion topic. But
So I guess I agree with Jeff, even though I know you know, if you haven't been on the board long, then it doesn't seem like we do this a lot. If you've been on the board longer, it seems like we do this a lot. And I agree with Jeff. I do get, this has been on the books. We knew this was coming. It's been coming down the road the whole time. We knew that we'd have to do this. So I kind of do wonder, why wasn't this in our last board packet? And I do feel like we need to I'm not willing to set aside the rules to do this right now, I guess, either, because the cameras are there. And we could have a meeting, I guess, by Zoom next week just to approve this. I just think there are reasons that we have policies and procedures, and I guess I agree with Jeff that I'd like to get back to those and try to stay away from the setting aside the rules for things.
I can speak to the package if you want me to. And that's just a simple explanation in that we didn't have the information at the last meeting. So that was more of a proposal in terms of what the concept would look like. And at the time, we were very much focused on, well, one of the cameras that wasn't selected as the best option we had reviewed at that point. Upon further exploration, it was determined that a different camera met our needs better. So there's a lot that's taken place between the last two meetings in terms of looking at the options that were available. And as you can see in the proposal, we're actually saving quite a bit of money and getting a better, more capable product because of that additional time that was invested. So
When this initially came to finance committee, it was a
300,
bigger number.
Wasn't it crazy?
well, it would have been about 50,000 just for the cameras, not all the support infrastructure, the cabling, the mounts, and all those things. So this is saving approximately 15,000 from the camera purchase, and then that gives us a little more wiggle room to get the additional accessories that we'll need to make this work, up to and including potentially those enhanced speaker systems that we're still exploring. So, but that being said, this is just it's a better camera. It's pretty impressive, and if we can get the sound piece figured out, I think there's a lot of potential here moving forward.
As long as we can have the meeting before this quote expires, because I would hate for you to let this quote expire and
So let me take
That
it
would
from
be
here.
this week.
So here's what I would suggest. First, I must say, I disagree. I think during the pandemic, we've had to set aside the rules because we're unusual times and we're leaving. And that's, and there's been good reasons for it, where we needed to strike on something. I buy a lot of equipment and I see what happens daily to stuff and the supply and demand and what's happening. So I'm concerned. I'll agree that we won't do it. I don't know if it's because there's a concern we want to hear. If people have issues with this public, that's fine. I would like to schedule Zoom no later than Thursday.
Schedule Wednesday.
To do it, okay. Like I said, no later than Thursday, so if we can coordinate a Zoom call, Wednesday or Thursday for everybody.
We only need 4 people, right?
Yeah, it did, yeah.
Is this,
So,
expiration set in stone? Or could it be extended?
Well, unless there's a shortage. Well, go ahead, Scott, sorry.
to me, it's not about their expiration date, it's just
Well,
about,
per what you looked at.
Well, it says that it looks like it's a created quote number and your quote expires November 9th. So I would just hate for you to call on November 15th and they say, hey, your quote expired November 9th. That school in Texas did just purchase and now your quote is going to be pushed off to this day. So
Yeah, I just don't know. But,
Right.
they are giving us a special price, a discounted price due to the bulk order. So that's what's reflected in the current estimate or current
so
quote.
let me back up. Does anybody have a concern with the purchase of this equipment?
no.
No, but I feel like they've only been on board for a year and we've set aside this rule a number of times.
Okay. What I would suggest is that we schedule a Zoom meeting Wednesday or Thursday to move this down. Everybody okay with that?
Thursday is the start of the MASB conference, so if anybody else, I know that I am going, signed up for it, so,
Yeah, I am also.
Okay, Wednesday.
so,
We'll try to make it Wednesday. Everybody's okay with Wednesday. Sarah, is that better, Wednesday?
Yes.
I can get with you about it. I just know that MASB is Thursday.
Okay.
Can I ask if there's a preference, just to narrow down the survey that we'll do? Is there a preference to do morning?
How about like
Evening?
9 o'clock in the morning, 8 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday?
I mean, we can give you some times, right, to pick from, I guess, just as a starting point, so we don't send out like every hour of the day, like, is there like a,
Yeah, if there's enough people to do the morning, but I'm doing a 24-hour shift tomorrow, so I'm not gonna be there in the
Yeah.
morning.
Early morning would be preferable, or in the afternoon for me. I have meetings in the morning.
all right, well, I guess what we'll do is we'll just do both and see which one we can get the most members at, and then if that's an issue, let me know, and
Wednesday.
we'll figure that out.
Wednesday at 7 o'clock.
At night?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
And
fine.
it'll take 10 minutes, I think.
7 p.m. Wednesday?
Can I get clarified? Is it remote or is it?
Yes.
Zoom remote.
7 p.m.
7 p.m. Thursday, Wednesdays.
Does that work for everybody?
Yep.
Do you prefer 6?
I would prefer 6.
The only potential conflict, just to put it out, is the soccer match that evening.
Oh,
And I
true.
don't know if you're planning on going. Obviously, I can be either place, but, or I can do it from the, I can do it from the pitch perhaps, but yeah.
Alright, so you have
We're
something to
winning.
work with there, narrow it down. That's it. Okay, thanks.
6 p.m., 7 p.m.
But if the soccer game's gonna interfere with that, then move it forward.
How about 5 o'clock?
I can do Wednesday morning, so, I mean, if I can do Wednesday morning, and, I mean, if
I
we
can
have
do
4
Wednesday.
right now.
Yeah, I just have I have a mid-morning meeting, so anytime before.
Well, if Jeff can do Wednesday, I mean, and can you do
I can have
Wednesday
2 meetings
morning?
going at the same time, I'm good.
Right.
Yeah, so that would be enough.
I mean, I think we have enough to look at Wednesday morning.
Okay, alright.
3 a.m. I'll be at 10.
A little early.
Okay. Are there any questions in this discussion? And they laid out the 3 different options that were looked at. The original aim was the owl, the price comes down, they determined that what works better is actually cheaper. So this is CARES Act funding, and it is something that's part of the face-to-face return. So any other questions that you need answered before you're comfortable when we do need to take action? Okay,
Just procedural.
sounds good. Now let's go and move into action items for this evening. We have the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting held on October 19th. Do I have a motion for approval?
Motion.
Well, hold on a second.
What?
So, hearing this from a couple board members and reading how the last meeting we made our motion for starting school, it's come to my attention that, because I made the motion and it was written for us, when we said to be determined for the secondary schools,
For the dates.
that the dates were to be determined. The plan itself, spot on, but the dates as far as when we actually return is still something that comes back to the board. And that's what the majority of the board members who voted felt that to be determined was that there'd be a discussion, board, and we start. Not that we're saying the dates whenever administration wants the date to start. Because what we've got is, we knew that this thing's gonna be, there's some time before we would start. We can all say, picture perfect, this is what we're gonna do. But, everybody wants to just talk about with COVID, they wanna talk about deaths, okay? COVID's not about deaths. COVID's also about disability. There's a lot of things that go on with this illness. And we're seeing cases rise significantly from when we started this conversation. This is a moving target, okay? I'm not a doctor, I'm not a lawyer, I'm a financial planner, and that's what I do, I plan. And I look at long-term things with everything that I do. So, I look at this and I say, yep, 2 weeks ago when we were talking about all this stuff, we weren't seeing 3,000 cases in a day in the state. We weren't seeing surrounding communities shutting down their schools as much as they are right now. We've seen sporting events canceled, 2 sporting events for our school district of kids that fortunately went and got tested, or they could have been here competing against our athletes last Friday night or tonight from a neighboring community that has face-to-face learning. I'm not against getting kids back into schools, okay? And from everything I've learned, most important thing is getting our youngest learners back in school, and that's what we're doing on Wednesday. But I'm also hearing from a number of teachers, community members, that we have done a really great job at our secondary schools, and I think that we as a board need to make sure that we are that we're paying attention to the numbers when we make that decision to say, yes, hey, we're ready to go and we can go. But I think that there's a lot of things that are going to happen in the next 30 days that we really got to be paying attention to before we get more kids in buildings.
So you're just.
So I'm saying that
clarifying the motion that's.
the
I was
motion
gonna say, do
that's
you wanna
in the minutes.
rescind your motion?
No,
Because
I
I'm
don't-
trying to
no.
figure out where you're.
No, that I'm clarifying that to be determined is something that's still coming back to the board.
Well,
That
no, well, that to be determined, I thought was for the technology piece to be in place, because we couldn't start unless that technology piece was gonna be in place. So, yes, I assumed that it was gonna come back to the board with a start date
So-
once that was completed, but I didn't know that it was a moving start date based on COVID testing, because I assume Adam and the local health department would be assuming that, and at this point, I don't think Linda Vale has
So-
stated that we shouldn't be moving forward.
So it was my understanding that we were approving, like Jeff said, we were approving for the secondary levels, the plan, and doing a to be determined because we wanted to let professionals be professionals as far as we're monitoring a situation that's ever changing, we're monitoring how the return is going K through 12, and then there'd be a lot of collaboration among a lot of people determining what the best dates were for secondary and high school. And it was my understanding that it did not need to come back to the board for us to vote on those dates. Is that, did others, Nancy, what did you think?
Okay, well, so I need a little bit to put a disclaimer. I feel like there's so much that we've been looking at and doing. So embarrassingly for myself, I thought that we were just voting on the elementary. And I guess I wasn't even thinking when it said start date to be determined, I guess I was just thinking that we would need to come back and vote for the whole 6-12 plan again. So I feel like I can't even, I had a conversation with Adam and then I went back and read everything and was like, this is totally my bad. So I was confused, and that's on me. The start date, I feel like I guess I'm not even, I guess it's semantics here in a sense, and it was Jeff's motion, so now I don't know if I have an opinion right now, I'm sorry, because I was
No,
so
that's-
far off of what I thought we voted on until I talked to
I can see
Adam.
both sides of it very easy, so it's.
Right, so
that's what I'm saying, a lot of confusion.
I confused myself with everything that we had talked about and what the motion was really about, and we didn't focus on the middle school or high school, so I was, and I feel like we haven't even heard of a date, like there hasn't even been a date floated around, so I guess if it's semantics, then it's like the date would be determined, I guess we would have to vote. I mean, I don't want to make I have to think about it. I don't even want to make a rash decision because I feel like I'd be just not.
Chris, did you have an instruction?
Sorry.
One way or the other on this?
When I voted on it, I believe, I was voting on the plan itself. So when I looked at it, I voted on the plan itself, saying that we approved the plan with the understanding that the date itself was flexible because we didn't know when the technology was going to be available, what was going on, and that we would put it into the hands of the administrators. I didn't think that we were going to come back and vote on it again.
Vote on the plan or vote on the date?
Vote on the date. I thought that we were putting it back in the hands of the
Fair.
administrators that say to us, we're ready, and to
There we
inform
go.
the board, but that we're saying the plan was good, based on that. That was my understanding. Okay?
And that's what I guess I didn't mean to say I thought we were gonna vote, I thought, that somehow he would propose to us, do a superintendent update, like we're ready to go on this date, everything's installed.
I thought it was up to administration, we didn't have to come back and vote on a date.
That was, I had ordered
No, you're not, I didn't know if you wanted me to ask you.
Well, yeah, I can only speak for administration. Our interpretation of the motion was that the board approved the plan, and it was at the administration level to determine what the dates would be, given there's some variables with preparedness related to the technology that we don't know yet. Obviously, the board would be informed immediately upon the date being solidified, as would the community, but that was simply our interpretation of what the motion implied.
That's, okay. I think that's,
Just so we got clarification, that's all.
okay. All right. Well, you done with great coordination.
So I'll make a motion, to approve the minutes as,
I think we had one already, didn't we?
Chris made the
Oh, yeah.
motion, I just need
Yeah.
a second.
I'll second it.
So I have a motion from Chris, a second from Jeff. Any further discussion on approving the minutes? Okay, all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Okay, minutes approved. Thank you, Jeff, for bringing that up. We don't have any roll call items. I don't believe we have any separate action items. Review of board goals, we don't have them listed. I think, as I've mentioned in other meetings while we've been in this situation, I do think as we continue to keep our eye on the goals, and even with the challenges that we've had, I feel confident. Goal number one is provide high quality educational experience for all students. I think with the curveballs that we've been thrown and everything we've been up against, that the district has gone above and beyond and doing the best we can to meet this goal and still provide high quality. Certainly we can debate if it's as high quality in different formats, but what matters is that the effort putting forth is phenomenal at all levels, and we're hearing very positive things, so I'm comfortable there. Goal 2, increase fund balance to 5%. We are now over 5%. Goal 3, strengthen communication with students, parents, staff, and community. Certainly the communication has been different. What we're under, but I think I see a high level of communication going on between all stakeholders, and then we continue to, as we move forward, obviously take into consideration safety of everyone, and are implementing and doing a lot with regard to always providing a safe environment for our students. So I'm personally very comfortable with the work we're doing with regard to meeting our goals, and these goals will soon be reviewed and updated for going forward for 2021. Is there any comments on board goals from anybody? Okay.
I do one thing real quick.
Yeah.
So those handbooks, since we're meeting in a couple days, if we don't have a problem with the handbooks, can't we vote for them too at the same Zoom meeting?
Well, is there anything in the handbooks, is there anything that's holding anybody up from doing anything?
No, but then they would be published and people could see it as they're making decisions on, some kids may still change their mind what they want to do.
Well, plus the fact that there are some guiding principles in regards to COVID-19 preparedness for the elementary level and the preschool level and middle learners.
Then I would entertain if we wanted to include those for those that are returning this week.
Yeah.
And for those ones, because of to me, the test is there something pressing within the time frame between now and when it's scheduled to take action that could jeopardize in any way, shape, or form, or have it be too late. And so if I apply that measure, then I could understand that maybe there are things in there that we want to make official before those students return to class. I could go along with that. But beyond that, I don't see a need to do that. So
I think that when you show the way that the handbook's going to be updated and people have a chance to see it, they may change from whether they were planning on in-person or remote. I think that.
Any thoughts from you guys?
So there's been some preliminary correspondence, at least at the elementary level, that I think took place prior to my return, that somewhat conceptualized some of the things that are in those addendums. I think in reality, this would be one of those, and I can't remember what the policy was, but we looked at it last year where we implemented as administration, informing the board, and actually I had this in my notes, I neglected to bring it up earlier, where we implement a policy or a policy-like action with board knowledge, understanding that we'll bring it back to the board later for official approval. So I think we can do it either way, depending on what.
Well,
you're
My
most
industry, we
comfortable
call
with.
it file and use. So you file it, you use it, unless you're told that it's not approved. Is that?
Or asking
Well,
for forgiveness.
Yeah,
that's
Yeah.
I mean, I guess, is there anything, I mean, Jeff had said that there could be things in there that people could change their mind. I guess I'm thinking, are you thinking like parents might change their mind, switching from face-to-face to online? Because I thought that we were asking parents to kind of make a choice and stick with it for a while. Like, there wouldn't be that move, like, so I guess I'm hesitant to kind of open a door when I'm not even, like, is that a door that even can be open to change your mind from going to face-to-face to online? Like, I don't know what would be in there that should change a parent's mind, but I do know that during conversations, it was like really pressed to us that parent, like, I feel like that's kind of not, like, I don't want to make it.
So let me give you a scenario. Yes, you got parent-teacher conferences going on right now. You have parents that are talking to their teachers. They're asking them, how are they doing online? Because they're not really sure. I mean, they see grades, but, you know, and the teachers say, your child is probably performing as well, if not better than the majority of the class. Or, your child is really struggling, okay? Parents are hearing that right now. If they were asked to make a decision or give a preliminary decision last week or the week before, okay? I can tell you, and I will probably be calling the office tomorrow, what we've heard from tonight in our parent-teacher conferences is there's really not a reason for our children to attend in person. Not that we're gonna have a family discussion about it again, but it's like they're thriving. So, and I'm sure there's others that are thriving. And I know there's some students that are athletes and things like that that might be saying, I mean,
Can I just I just want to make sure I'm clear for folks that are, is it okay?
Absolutely.
There's a distinction between the flex, since we're kind of on this topic, there's a distinction between the flexibility that we can provide with elementary and preschool and the secondary, in terms of how the model was implemented. So there's a lot more fluidity that we can provide parents and students at the secondary level. The elementary level at this point is pretty much locked in. So
Well,
just wanna
so,
make sure.
because high school's not coming back, so there would be no reason for the high
Can I make
school
a
to be met on
recommendation?
Wednesday.
Yeah,
so-
tell me others. I think for the changes to the
The addendums.
Handbooks. To me, it's bigger, it's more substantive. I'd like to have people more time to review it if they want to make comments. We've all reviewed it, we're comfortable with it. I think the administration is under the assumption that this is stuff that's gonna go through. I don't see a reason to, in 2 days, quickly approve those. It's assumed they will be. I think we have a very specific reason to coming in 2 days to approve the purchase of some equipment that's needed for our plan. And quite frankly, we're in a spot right now where daily the availability of equipment and quite frankly, the pricing changes. And so I just wanted to act quickly on that, but I personally am not concerned about waiting until our next meeting to make these rule changes official.
but what about the elementary that's starting school on Wednesday?
Again, these are the changes and it's kind of implied that they're in effect. Right, that's what I'm hearing, and that's just
Yeah,
more of a rubber stamp.
operationally, we're gonna utilize this with the board's, knowing that the board has knowledge of what we're implementing, and official approval could be later, or even changes. And, we might have changes later too, based on lessons learned that we might have to bring back, so.
Yeah. Yep.
And might I add also, a lot of the safety concerns that are addressed in these amendments are requirements from the health department. So we have that to fall back on, that it's a health department rule or law.
Yeah, there's nothing in there that's not gonna be done because we haven't officially voted on it yet, so I would like to stay for us and do that, so, okay. I don't think we have correspondence. I'm still trying to figure out this new board book, but it sure doesn't look like there's any.
Yeah, I've got to get paper copies just for a little bit until I can figure it out completely,
Okay,
so.
all right. And that brings us to the second opportunity for citizens' comment. This time it does not need to be pertinent to the agenda items, but any topic that you would like to share with the board. Okay. That's maybe a first. And then that brings us to board member reports and requests, and I will open it up to the board if anyone has anything.
I always have something, so.
That's good. You see, I tend to look
I know,
at
you look right at me,
got
you're
that.
waving, you're looking like, hey.
Yeah.
Again, I just wanted to send a big thank you out. It seems like, you know, with our youngest learners coming to school on Wednesday, everybody's pitching in and again, doing jobs that they don't typically do. You know, the bus drivers walking kids into the buildings, I send a sincere thank you to them that, is going to be really helpful and amazing, and everybody doing their part. I also wanted to send a big thank you out to Katie. I know with all of the different grants and all the different opportunities coming in, there's a lot to weed through, and I appreciate the time that you're putting on that. So I'm just thanking everybody who is jumping in and taking over and doing things that probably outside the norm of their job description. I also was wondering when these cameras get installed and get up and running, if we could get some type of demo of what that looks like. I'm not saying it needs to be done anytime soon, but even if
We'd
it
only have time for a demo if we approved it tonight.
today. But it would be like, I don't know, January, February, whenever, I don't know, it would kind of be fun just to see. I mean, I think, you know, unfortunately, we can sit and look at all of the horribleness that COVID has brought around, but I do think for our school system and a lot of school systems, getting up and running online and getting all of this technology and getting, you know, moving in this way isn't necessarily to be looked at as a bad thing. So I think if, you know, embracing it and seeing how it works and everything, this would be fun to see.
Okay. Amanda.
It's just a small thing, next meeting, I will be hunting.
Okay.
So I will be calling in, I'm just gonna ask for forgiveness because I'm pretty sure the only place with Wi-Fi is gonna be a bar. So,
Well, we may have to just
I'll have
move
my
the meeting
diet
there.
Yeah.
that's my plan.
All right.
Good luck to the soccer team tomorrow, or
Yes.
Wednesday.
What's that?
So
Good
exciting.
luck to
Oh,
soccer.
yep.
It was fun to see the parade go by of the buses, and I think we had every single ambulance, fire truck, police vehicle. I mean, it was really cool, and my kids got a front row from our house, so it was awesome.
In football, we play Friday.
We played Friday against Lake Fenton home. Our
Oh.
first game was pretty easy. Didn't even have to show up, but.
And what are the rules now about attendance? What are we?
So it's we're allowed, I think, 983, is it at our field, I think? So, but MHSA sells the tickets online. So like the football programs release it to the families first for like 24 to 48 hours, the link. And then after that, they just send them, you know, put the link on Facebook at the Williamston boosters and around, but you have to purchase it and use a mobile device. So you have to like show up with your phone and open up the email. So kind of like you're a Groupon or something. So you got
An e-ticket.
it's an e-ticket. So you have to like, I'm ready and hit it that I'm here and then they can scan it. So, but
So do
Go
family, so it opens up to family. Is it
Yeah.
like a race, like you gotta get on, or do you only?
it is, it's first come, first served, and they don't allow you to buy more than 4, so.
And,
So even with buying 4 per each, is
I know,
that
I
enough
did
for
that.
each player?
It really is, because I think we were trying to count, like, if every player had this, it would still only be like 350 or
So
400
everybody has
tickets, so you
nothing.
still have another 600, 500 and something for members,
by two.
500 for the community,
yeah.
so.
But family, but, I
mean,
mean, I
yeah.
think it's important family get there.
And when you're thinking you have like 28 kids, 40-something people on a team, and each person really gets 2 tickets each, and then the rest of the extended family kind of goes out on open, it's pretty good.
All right.
Very cool.
I was amazed at how many people were at the field, actually. I was like counting, going, is this 900? Because it seems like so many more
Yeah.
when you put them all in there.
Anything else?
Well, they're talking about the tickets.
Oh,
So the app is GoFan. And so Wednesday, in volleyball, they had the forfeit tonight, so they advanced. So Lansing Catholic and Portland play on one side, and they're listed. That's the 5:30 game. I think ours will come up later today. You know, they give you
Oh.
technically the game was
It is the
played
same
today.
app for every
So
sport.
tomorrow probably is when those tickets will become available. So,
okay.
and I think they cleared the gym between the two matches now too, because there's only so many that can be in the gym.
That makes sense.
Heck yeah.
All right. Well, I'd like to officially recognize Betsy now to our first in-person meeting, so great to have you. Thank you for coming in. And actually, Katie, this is your first in-person full board meeting too. Second, is it? Good. That's right. Excellent. All right. Well, with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion to adjourn by Jeff, second by Chris. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Meeting adjourned.
Buccaneers are up 3-0 with nine.
Everyone want to shut off the screen? They're at 26.
26.
What I saw.